Welcome, everyone, to It Tastes Different Gaming Appetizers. And tonight, we're going to talk about a new study that claims to reveal the most confusing video games that have been giving players troubles throughout this year. There's several on here that are prior to this year, but it's mostly for this year. So, a study that was done by Uswitch analyzed a bunch of Google search data. So there's kind of the first hitch in this, if you will. Listen to this, is that they basically just studied a bunch of people's search history to determine what the most confusing games are. And they did this in attempt to determine games that players needed the most help with, which I think that's flawed logic to begin with, right? Because just because you're searching for tips and tricks on a game or information on a game does not mean that you are necessarily confused by it. You may be looking for something specific or anything like that. Or maybe you're not a player who likes solving puzzles in games and you want the down and dirty, quick and easy answer to the puzzle. You're like, I just don't want to spend time on it. That's not confusing. It's just that's your style. This has been going on for years. Since the invention of games, we've had so many different types of things. We had magazines. You used to be able to buy entire books to help you get through games. Remember Prima guides? Come on, guys. So just because you bought that or you had gotten that doesn't necessarily mean that it was a confusing game. So that's why I think this story is a little bit flawed and this study is a little bit flawed in my opinion. But let's kind of go through it. They basically put together a listing of games, and the most confusing game that they came up with was Elden Ring. I find that highly idiocracy. It's just stupid. But so let's go down the quick and dirty top 10 list of most confusing games of the last year or so. They got Elden Ring is number 1, Metroid Dread is number 2, Resident Evil Village is number 3, Assassin's Creed Valhalla is 4, Far Cry 6 is 5, Fall Guys is number 6. Fortnite is number 7. Luigi's Mansion 3 is as number 8. Horizon Zero Dawn is number 9. So notice that they said most recent, but that's not a most recent game. That's been out for a long time. And then Deathloop. So I don't quite understand where they're going with this or how they came to these conclusions that because these Google searches of these games and various Google searches means that people are confused by it, because I think it's just flawed logic, right? They think that if you search for a walkthrough of a scenario that you're confused or something like that. Maybe, I'll kind of get to my own thoughts, but let me ask Nick and Shane their thoughts first before I dive into my own. So Nick, what are your thoughts, man? Why do you think that, especially like Elden Ring, was top on this Uswitch's survey of most confusing games?
I think most of these games are, exactly what you said. It's not necessarily that the user is confused. They're just trying to find some tips and tricks, and some various things. I mean, Elden Ring, I looked up Elden Ring stuff. I wasn't confused as far as like how to play the game or anything like that. It's just looking up like, I know I can do X, but I can't figure out how to do X, right? Like I've tried and I've tried various things and I just can't figure it out. So it's not necessarily confusing. Not as that I mean, I guess you're confused in the way of how do you get this done, but really it's just kind of like I've exhausted all options. So I'm going to go look up and figure out what's the process for doing X, right? Or maybe you're trying to fight a boss and what's the best strategy for fighting this boss, right? There's got to be some sort of strategy that someone's found the best way to fight them. And so maybe I need to find the best way to do that. So let me go look it up and see what's the best way to tackle this boss, right? And so with Elden Ring and even Metroid Dread, like Metroid Dread is not a confusing game. It's just like any other Metroid game. It's a great game, but there are some parts in it where, I mean, there was a couple times where I got lost, right? And so, again, it's just looking up like a guide going, okay, I'm lost. I can't figure out how to get to this section. So how do I get there? I think this makes, it seems like phrasing is the most, the way they say it, the most confusing. It makes me think that people are baffled by the design of the game or something like that, or nothing makes sense. Whereas in this case, it's I think the framing and everything was just kind of off for their survey, and the way that they're looking at things. Like, users aren't necessarily confused; they're just looking for various things, right? They're trying to figure out how to get to, have tips and tricks and how to get to from point A to point B, or like you said, maybe they're doing a puzzle and they're the type of gamer that doesn't want to try to figure it out. They just want to look up the combination to the lock, right? I don't want to mess around the keypad. And I know there's a note somewhere that tells me the number, but I don't know where that note's at, and I don't really want to take the time to look for it. So I'm just going to look it up and I've done that numerous times. I'm like, I've given up on this. I'm just going to look it up. So it's very interesting, the games on this list. I can understand some of them, but I think mainly it's mostly for tips and tricks. And yeah, I mean, I used to have a bunch of Prima guides back in the day. One of my most all-time favorite ones is when I got Resident Evil 2 for the PlayStation. I think my parents or somebody had bought me the Prima guide. I didn't need the Prima guide for Resident Evil. Resident Evil is pretty much a linear game, and the puzzles aren't that complicated to figure out. But that was one of the coolest guides I think I owned back in the day, because it had so much awesome artwork in it, and it had a few different tricks and tips in there that were really interesting, and like some of the unlocks you can get for different costumes and various things. But the guide itself was just really awesome, and I loved looking through it. And I would, even though I played through Resident Evil several times, and I would still go into the book and just kind of follow along with it, because it was just fun, right? To kind of like check things out and see where I'm at in the book as well as the game. So I don't know. I mean, yeah, I think the wording is just off. The most confusing, I would say the most played, or maybe the most researched, maybe, or something like that, would be a good way of labeling it than most confusing. I don't think gamers are confused. I think a lot of people like to do a lot of research. Elden Ring was a very popular game this year. I mean, still, the year's almost over, and still my #1 game of the year for this year, right? Nothing has beaten it. And I looked up a ton of crap for that game, like all the time, just various tips and tricks. And there's so much secrets and various things in that game, and just various ways to do things. It's like you have to almost look something up, right? There's just so much. It's impossible to like experience it firsthand without having to look up something. So a lot of these games are kind of like that. I think it's just more in that regard than confusing. But what do you think, Shane?
Yeah, I mean, Fortnite. What is confusing about Fortnite? Strategies, tips on how to do certain things that I understand, but what is confusing about it? A to B, kill crap between. Last one to survive. It's about as linear as you get, or as a strategy. I mean, you just go A to B, kill things on the way. People looking up tips like what's the best way to build something real fast, and best weapons, things like that. I can understand, but there's no confusion about it. No confusion about Elden Ring. Now, Elden Ring doesn't hold your hand, and there's some things that you just figure out on your own. So I still wouldn't say that's confusion. Confusion would be, in my mind, be, so what's this button do? And what am I supposed to go? Where's hey, Mom, I'm going to take this game back. I don't get it. That's confusion. These games are not, I mean, Resident Evil Village, for God's sakes, amazing game. Nothing confusing about it, except for, maybe, I want to find out how to get into this room. There's a secret to this, or there's a secret to that. That's not confusion. That is somebody going, I don't want to take the time to find all the safe numbers, or, figure out the puzzle. I'm going to be lazy. That's this guy right here. I don't want to deal with doing all that, so I will Google those things up. Not ashamed of it. Bill did it before me. I'm going to copy Bill. Just the way it is. I think if they got any kind of government funding to do this study, I'm gonna be seriously pissed off. I want my money back on this. So I mean, it's ridiculous. Uh, I don't really see any game to the point of that confusing to where, you don't grasp the concept of how to play. That is a confusing scenario. But, just looking up tips and tricks and, what's the best way to beat, boss, here, boss there. That's not confusion. That is just strategizing. That is using tools for your advantage. Nothing confusing about it. I think just somebody, wanted to, put an article out that made them sound like they knew what the hell they were talking about, and they didn't. So you Switch, you suck. So what about you, Nick? Or Pat?
Well, I already went.
Sorry.
I'll tell you more.
Lucky for you, Shane, you Switch is in the UK, so none of your tax dollars went to any of this survey. They seem to do a lot of stuff what U-Switch does, but I'm kind of in agreement with you guys. I mean, the wording of the study is kind of weird. The verbiage they used of confusion, because I Googled the hell out of Elden Ring, and it wasn't because I was confused. It was like I Googled stuff like, because I'm only going to get one playthrough through this game. I know it, even as much as I loved it. And unfortunately, I am with Nick. It is my game of the year game right now. It beat out what I thought was going to be my game of the year, which was Horizon Forbidden West. It beat that out, and it beat that out easily, in my opinion. But I Googled things like, because I was only going to get one playthrough, I'm like, what are some of the best weapons for this playstyle? What is some of the best armor for this playstyle? I'm like, cool. Where do I get that? Because Elden Ring, as Shane had mentioned, doesn't hold your hand. It's pretty much you explore, you find stuff, or you just run your happy ass into each boss face first, and hopefully you can beat them. And that's Elden Ring. And there is, I swear, every time I played that game, I could not play it for 30 minutes. I'm sucked in for hours when I got on, and I'm like, and it's a great, amazing game. It wasn't confusing. It is difficult. Yes, I would go to call this Souls Light, in my opinion. It's not as hard as Dark Souls by any means. But it is difficult. It's not easy. It's not like your casual. I consider myself, I don't consider myself like super casual, but I also don't consider myself super hardcore. I'm like in between like hardcore and casual, whatever that is going to be on a gamer spectrum. And to the point that I don't like Dark Souls, I don't like Bloodborne, I don't like stuff like that. But Elden Ring, amazing game of the year for me. And I'm not that kind of gamer. And I wasn't confused by it at all. I knew after playing jumping in the first time, what I was getting myself into, and so that kind of stuff. So I think that really it's not a confusion thing. It's more of a, people are looking for help and guides and build guides and things like that. Because anybody who's played any type of MMO or min and maxing game has done this. They're like, show me some really good builds, because, like me, I am not going to spend the hours and days writing out my own formula to find out what the best set of this is to give me the max amount of this. I'm going to be like, cool, I'm going to enjoy what this other person's already put into this to make it easier on me. So I don't have to spend hours. I'll spend minutes looking at his build and going, I like that. I don't like that. Oh, that looks really cool. I want that. Where do I get that sword? Where do I get that shield? Where do I get that armor? And that's what I'm going to do, because like I said, I get one playthrough through this, and that's it, because I'm not going to have the time to go back through it because of what we do. We review new games and stuff like that. And I don't have time to go back to stuff in my back catalog. And some people are probably the same way. They're like, I got a finite amount of time to play this game, or they just don't want to put in the effort to, play it multiple times. They're just like, I want to get what I want out of this game the first run through, and that's it. I really don't understand how like Fall Guys and Fortnite got on this list at all. And in my opinion, even Far Cry 6 and Assassin's Creed Valhalla, because those games there are just, I don't know. I don't understand that at all. And why is Horizon Zero Dawn on here in any sense of the word? Like, there was nothing confusing about that game that I could think of at all, in my opinion. I didn't get to play Metroid Dread. I do have Nick's copy of Metroid Dread that I have yet to play, which I'm holding hostage, you know. But Resident Evil Village, I didn't look up a single thing in that one, and that one was a great game. So I don't understand how they're saying these are confusing games, but that's just my opinion. They weren't confusing. Nothing on this list was confusing to me. Deathloop was extremely boring, but it wasn't confusing. And pretty much most of the stuff on here, I've played everything on here except for Metroid Dread. Like I said, I'm just waiting to play it. It's a flawed study, and I think the wording is what gets it. Maybe they should have just said most Googled games instead of most confusing games, because that would have made more sense.
That'd have been more accurate.
It doesn't really get into what search criteria they search for. Did people search for walkthroughs, for how do I do this, or what did they search for? Because even searching for any one of those terms doesn't mean jack, because some people just maybe give me a walkthrough for X boss. You know, so they're like, okay, I'm having a little bit of trouble with this boss, not because I'm confused, but because his move set seems so random. And they're like, what is his set of moves and what do they do? You know, because they don't want to take the time to fight that boss 10 or 20 times. Because I don't remember how many times I fought the first boss, you know, until I got some help, you know, and learned what I was doing wrong in the game, which was just trying to do exactly what I said, which is run my face into the cheese grater from boss to boss to boss and just beelining every boss, because not my type of game. So I didn't know what I was expecting. I was just like, I'm going to follow these directional arrows. They're telling me where to go. But in all reality, I was just being an idiot, and just my low level ass self was going right for the big boss of the zone and saying, hey guy, waving my toothpick around. And he's like, nah, get out of here. You know, so a great game. Yeah. I don't understand why it's on the confusion list, but I'm with Nick. It's my game of the year game for this year, sadly.
Well, Far Cry 6 is the one that probably bugs me most, because it's the 6th Far Cry. It hasn't diverted its gameplay ever. So
come on, man. They
added pets.
They added pets. It's a different game.
All right. I'm confused on how to pet my pet.
You're confused on why you couldn't pet the alligator? Or why, when you did pet the alligator, you came back with no hand? I don't know.
I fed it the kitten. It's a flawed article. It's a flawed, you know, the whole thing is flawed just because it doesn't make sense. And by the way, there is nothing confusing about pretty much any of those games. Just, you know, people want to do things the easier way. I mean, that's just the way it is. That's why mobile games have so much money. People pay to have the best weapons and things like that. People don't want to do a lot of the cool things like Silent Hill. Man, I had to buy a strategy guide for that one. Silent Hill 2, because the puzzles were so good, but they were hard. I bought a strategy guide. I wasn't confused. I just didn't want to take time to deal with all of them, because I'm more of an action person. So.
Yeah, it's really weird, and like I said, I was trying to, I mean, so basically their data points to like Elden Ring had 171,840 searches. Now I don't know what the guidelines were, because I'm having a really hard time finding the article that all these the survey that all these articles are referencing, and basically that's the number for Elden Ring, with Metroid Dread only having 53,880 searches, but that's a second place game. You know, and I don't get, I think, like I said, I think their logic is flawed and their approach to this is flawed, just because they're assuming, and that's the problem, right? They're assuming that you're searching for that because you're confused or you're lost, not because I'm lazy or I just don't want to put in the randomized legwork to find all these armor sets, try them out, and run them simulations on every possible spec and build and you know, and point that I can put into my armor, because these people that play these games put in a lot of time. Like I found articles where people would say, this is the soft cap for this stat. And I'm like, how much time did you put in to find that soft cap? You had to have like leveled from 1 to 999 or whatever the max was in this game to say, here's your soft cap 1, here's your soft cap 2, and this is like where you shouldn't go past this because adding more doesn't do jack, or it takes 10 more levels, 10 more points for every 1 point of this to get you that. People put in the time and effort to do that. And I am very grateful for those people because that means I don't have to attempt to do it. And that doesn't mean that I'm confused. It just means that I'm probably a little bit lazy or not as go-getter as they are,
I'm just lazy.
At times
I wonder if the keyword was why Elden Ring? Question mark.
What the question was, what is Elden Ring? And they're like, oh, that person's clearly confused.
That's it.
Yeah,
who is Elden Ring?
Half of them was grandma trying to figure out what they're buying their grandson. What is Elden Ring? Oh my God, look at that.
What is Metroid Dread hairdo?
All right, guys. You guys got anything else on this this survey before we go ahead and throw this one in the trash can?
No, the survey about confusion has led to nothing but confusion.
Yep. So let us know what you think. What do you think of the validity of this survey? I looked up USwitch and they do like surveys on just about everything. Is my baby's poop green? Is that okay? How many babies' poops are green? They do surveys on everything, energy, whatever. And they're UK based. So a lot of their stuff is based off of that. But this is just a Google search survey. So let us, what do you think of this survey? Because I think it's flawed, but that's just my opinion. That's our opinion. What do you think about this this survey? And do you have any confusions like we do? Let us know what you think down in the comments. And if you've made it this far in the video, please subscribe for us and like the video. Likes and subscriptions are free, by the way, free today. So go ahead and do that. And as always, we hope you enjoyed this episode and we hope to catch you in the next one.
See ya.